I would go to these beautifully rehabbed hotel buildings that we would finish, but there would be people in tents or cardboard boxes living outside of those buildings. So it was very much a juxtaposition, right? That we're building this housing, we're providing the social services, but the problem is bigger than any one building.
Marc Norman is one of the foremost leading experts in affordable housing.
Today, Marc is an associate professor at the University of Michigan and runs a development consulting firm called Ideas and Action.
I help cities think about affordable housing and economic development as part of shared prosperity and wealth building in favor of equitable development.
He got started on his path way back when he was a grad student in Los Angeles, when he worked for a nonprofit developer at Skid Row.
I mean, it was a harsh reality, the kind of which I really wasn't ready for. If you've seen pictures of Skid Row in LA, it really is like open air misery. So it was a real education, both in design and construction, but mostly in finance. I worked there for 4 years. When I moved to New York, I ended up moving to organizations that financed affordable housing.
Marc became very familiar with the challenges facing the development of affordable housing across the country, and he realized that what was happening in LA was happening all over. And over the years, it's only gotten worse.
California and many other places is not building enough housing, and housing is getting more expensive, and it's just gotten more expensive with each passing decade. We even have things like inclusionary zoning, where new development in some cities is required to be, right, to have 20% of the units be affordable. The problem is, if 20% is affordable in a low-income neighborhood, 80% is not affordable. I mean, to a large segment of the population. So if you keep multiplying that out, right, then the 80% might overwhelm the 20% in terms of neighborhood character, in terms of the kind of retail it draws, in terms of who businesses are marketing to, in terms of where jobs are located, et cetera, et cetera.
And it's not just the lack of supply that's making affordable housing inaccessible. Wages just aren't keeping up with housing prices today. According to the Joint Center for Housing Studies, there's nowhere in the United States that a couple making minimum wage could rent a home without being rent burdened.
I don't know how you actually ever catch up, especially with each year. Construction prices are going up, faster than inflation. So if incomes are staying the same and you don't have other ways of making money, you're losing ground, and we're losing ground in terms of building units.
Marc's key point is that while it's really important to build affordable housing, we need to do even more than that to address the housing crisis.
Right, because even if we built way more affordable housing units than we do now, which we do need to, wages and income still aren't keeping up with the housing costs. So people keep falling behind.
And of course, this isn't to say that there aren't programs and initiatives that help folks afford housing, but too often these are temporary fixes. They're not long-term solutions that really help people generate wealth that they can pass on to their families and children.
In other words, as essential as affordable housing is, it isn't enough on its own to close the wealth gap, which in the U.S. is particularly stark between Black and white Americans.
So what do we do?
We also have to figure out, how do we create wealth, build people's incomes, help people make money, not just while they're awake, but also while they sleep. We have to have some other models.
We're at a moment in time when new models are emerging.
Models that can help renters become homeowners, and models that can help community members become owners and investors in their neighborhoods.
And have the opportunity to generate wealth because of it.
Welcome to City of the Future, a podcast from Sidewalk Labs. Each week we explore the ideas and innovations that can transform cities. We're your hosts. I'm Eric Jaffe.
And I'm Vanessa Quirk. And in this episode, we are looking at new economic models that could help renters, particularly immigrants and new arrivals, become owners and get access to what has historically been the means of wealth generation in this country.
To help them go from owing to owning.
If we go down memory lane, we think about the New Deal. where the Federal Housing Authority backed the mortgages of white folks, and non-white folks couldn't have access to the Federal Housing Authority in mortgages. And that created a compounding effect. Today, the average white family has 10 times as much wealth than the average black family. And the reason why is 76% of that wealth is baked in home ownership.
That's Abbey.
Abbey Wemimo, one of the co-founders at Esusu.
And this is Samir.
My name is Samir Goel. I'm one of the co-founders here at Esusu.
Esusu is an online platform that enables renters to accumulate credit by paying their rent on time. So renters pay on time, which makes the property managers happy, and Esusu reports that data to the major credit bureaus to get those renters good credit scores, making renters happy.
With Esusu, Abbey and Samir are tackling one piece of the wealth gap puzzle, helping lower-income households, especially newcomers and people of color, generate the credit scores that can open the doors to home ownership.
And that mission is very personal to both Abbey and Samir.
Abbey's life story, in fact, shows just how important their mission is.
I was born in the slums of Lagos, Nigeria. I lost my father at the age of 2. I was raised by my mother and 2 feisty sisters. One thing my mother fundamentally believed in, regardless of our socio-economic condition, was the power of education.
Abbey's mother worked hard to pay for him to attend one of the best high schools in Nigeria, where he excelled. He got into one of the best universities in Nigeria.
But when he also got into the University of Minnesota, he knew that's where he wanted to go, to pursue his American dream.
So I came from 80-degree weather in Lagos to negative 22 degrees in Minnesota, which was a character-building experience.
And then the first semester of college, Abbey and his mother, who'd come with him to Minnesota, realized they were going to need to borrow money to get by.
We walked into one of the largest financial institutions in Minneapolis. We were turned away because we did not have a credit score. I didn't even know what a credit score was.
This lack of a credit score was economically and emotionally devastating.
Our only option outside of borrowing from family members was going to a payday loan lender where we lend money at over 400% interest rate. In addition to that, my mother pawned my father's ring and a lot of our jewelry, and that's how we got started in the United States.
Samir's family also struggled when they immigrated to the U.S. from New Delhi.
My father was mugged on his first day here. We didn't really have a place to stay for shelter, and the only thing we could really afford was a McDonald's hamburger, which is really tough for a family of vegetarians. And so, long story short, most of my childhood was watching my parents work miracles with no credit and limited financial resources so that I could have some of the opportunities that I've been afforded. And so we always say at Esusu is, no matter where you come from, the color of your skin or your financial identity, it shouldn't determine where you end up in life.
Then, in 2017, Abbey and Samir met at a conference. Abbey had just founded a not-for-profit called Clean Water for Everyone and was getting a master's at NYU. Samir was an NYU business grad who had also founded a nonprofit, and his organization provided excess food to communities in need.
They hit it off and decided to start a for-profit company together in New York City. And they knew they wanted their company to have a greater mission, to help new arrivals to the U.S. become financially stable and work towards that elusive American dream of home ownership.
I think ownership is so powerful because, one, it's literally powerful in terms of the kind of wealth building and financial capability, but I think it's even more powerful because of what it represents, right? Like the whole concept of the American dream, you come to this country or you grew up in this country, whatever, and you work hard, you pay your dues, you do things the right way, and one day you're going to be a homeowner with your picket fence and you're going to be able to raise a family and care for them, right? That is what America symbolizes to so many people, and that's what I think makes home ownership in general powerful beyond the literal financial construct is like what it represents, right? It's kind of what people work towards. It's that thing that someone can call their own.
At first, Abbey and Samir weren't exactly sure how to help people achieve that dream. So they did what any good startup founders do. They talked to people.
We would talk to people and they'd say, look, we all know we need to save money, but there's 2 things that are stopping us. Number 1, we're not getting paid enough money. And number 2, we have all these financial shocks and emergencies, and there's nowhere where we can get access to cheap capital. As Abbey pointed out, access to debt at a reasonable interest rate is the foundation for America, right? And that's what these people were lacking. And so we kind of looked at ourselves and decided, we can't do anything about what people get paid. Maybe one day if we're in public office or something like that, but not today. But what we can do something about is this issue of credit and access to cheap debt.
What Esusu does is work with large property managers and landlords to report rental data into the credit rating agencies to help people establish or build their credit scores.
By helping renters boost their credit score simply by paying their rent on time, Esusu puts them on a path toward a mortgage and eventually home ownership.
You can't build wealth in this country just because we don't know enough about you, right? So we also saw this as a problem that data could solve, where it's like, all right, we need to debunk this myth that just because someone's low income or just because we don't know enough about you, you're a bad credit risk or that you're not worth betting on, because that's just not true.
When did you realize that, rent could be the way that we do this for folks?
If you look at the number of people who are kind of marginalized in the financial system and the people who are renters, that map is almost like 100% overlay. So basically that made it really easy for us to understand, okay, all the people we're trying to serve for the most part are renters. And then the other thing was just how powerful of a data point rent was, right? There's a study that said that there is no single data point that's more predictive of someone's ability to pay their mortgage than whether or not they pay their rent. And everyone listening to this is probably like, that's obvious. But the thing is, we don't even look at it when we're underwriting mortgages, and mortgages are the single biggest driver of wealth in this country. And so that's why we really focused on this. This is probably the most predictive at-scale data point that's available that's not being used today.
But it's not just the renter who benefits from this platform. Landlords and property managers, they benefit too. Indeed, they're the ones who pay for the Esusu platform to be implemented in their buildings.
I think we've set up this fake construct, right, that landlords are the bad guys, residents are the good guys, or vice versa, right? Landlords have this conception that every renter is just trying to pull a fast one on me and I'm just trying to make ends meet, right? We both have that win-lose construct. And I think what's so special is everyone benefits from something, which is resident financial stability. If renters are stable, that's good for them. They can pay their rent. They keep a roof over their head. They can provide for their family. And for the landlord, it's stable, predictable cash flow. They're not worried about going under. They're not worried about being the bad guy and having to kick someone out because they're trying to make ends meet as a landlord themselves. They have a business to run, but if the resident wins, they know that they win too.
And to help the resident win, Abbey and Samir have recently rolled out a new service, zero-interest microloans, which have helped some residents stay in place during the pandemic.
For Abbey and Samir, these offerings are just different ways to help people along their journey from renting a home to owning one.
If a resident, take Vanessa for example, lives in an affordable rental unit, has a credit score of 500, Esusu works in that property, we report 2 years of historical rent payments, we boost our credit scores to 720. Now Vanessa has some issues that she can't necessarily pay rent. We pay her up with a microloan so she's not evicted. We keep Vanessa in her home. The third step now is Vanessa gets a credit card, can also get a good job, and now wants to put down a down payment on her home because she has a good credit score, a good paying job, and now can build wealth. So what we are doing right now is giving credit where credit is due, number one. And then number two, making sure folks can leverage their financial identity to get access to this game we've played for close to over 100 years in this country to get access to a home, which appreciates in value. That's what the Esusu platform is all about. Financial identity, financial stability, wealth building.
I love what Esusu is doing. I mean, it's really a fantastic model, and I love that it aligns the incentives here of the landlords, the property managers, along with the renters.
And I love the big picture vision here, right? I mean, it's a credit score today, but that could mean a new job tomorrow. It can eventually mean a home of your own if you want, which, as Abbey and Samir have explained, is such a crucial component of wealth generation in the U.S.
Agreed. But we should be clear, homeownership isn't for everyone, right? There are a lot of benefits to renting and there are downsides to owning a home. But for those who do want to achieve that dream of homeownership, platforms like Esusu are helping individual households take steps towards it. I mean, that's a big deal.
That's right. But as Abbey and Samir mentioned, unlocking credit score is just one piece of this puzzle. There are many other barriers preventing folks, especially immigrants, from accessing the wealth that comes from individual homeownership. So if we want to achieve more equitable cities of the future, we need ways of building wealth that go beyond homeownership and that are accessible to entire communities.
Well, actually, Eric, there is a project in Portland, Oregon that's trying to do just that. I flew to Portland, dropped off my bags at a hotel, got in an Uber, driving east, away from the tall towers of downtown, to see the country's first Community Investment Trust, or CIT. Is that John? Hi, nice to meet you. I approached John, who was sitting outside the building, gave him a hello fist bump, and asked him to introduce himself and Plaza 122.
I'm John Haines, and we're Plaza 122, the first and pilot project of the Community Investment Trust.
For the last 2 decades, John has worked for Mercy Corps, an international NGO focused on economic development. Mercy Corps first bought the Plaza back in 2014.
The place itself, Plaza, is a mid-century 1962 strip mall, 29,000 square feet, has 30 tenants, nonprofit, for-profit, from accounting firms, low-cost funeral preparation, a hair salon, Somali American Council of Oregon, really reflecting the dynamics and diversity of this particular neighborhood.
John explained that the Plaza is located in one of the lowest income census tracts in Oregon.
Majority renters. This is really a landing pad for people from around the world, refugees, immigrants.
I asked John to explain what was so unique about this place, and also what the heck a community investment trust is. And he suggested that we take a walk to one of the offices in the Plaza and learn about the CIT from one of the investors themselves.
Well, it'd be great to talk with one of our tenants.
Yeah, for sure. We made our way to the other side of the Plaza, where a slender man with a very big smile was waiting by the door, ready to greet us.
Yonas, we made it.
Yonas Kassie is the founder and director of the Ethiopian and Eritrean Cultural Resource Center, or EECRC, a nonprofit founded in 2017 to help Ethiopian and Eritrean refugees. Yonas showed us to a small, wood-paneled office. Though at first, he did not want to sit at his desk.
I don't want to look boss.
But you are. Once I convinced Yonas that it was okay for him to look boss, we sat down and started to talk. He told me that he had first learned about the CIT by going to a neighborhood meeting. That's where they explained the concept. You invest small dollar amounts, anywhere from $10 to $100 a month, and then you own a share of this building, Plaza 122. As the building grows and thrives, that creates dividends for you on your investments over time. Yonas was floored.
So, especially as immigrants, you think of to be employed. You have to find any job, survival job. So let alone investing. Investing was huge for us. That kind of gives me, wow, if my community members invest on the community, that's huge. They feel important. They feel connected. So I was so impressed, and I went them and asked them, I want to learn about it more.
So he attended an information session. And then he signed up for the free class, From Owing to Owning, which is a prerequisite for becoming an investor in the Plaza. And then he started teaching the class in other languages so folks in his refugee community could become investors too. That's when Yonas jumped out of his chair and walked us over to the room next door so we could chat with 2 of his employees who had also taught the class, Sonya Damtew and Hawi Muleta. We absolutely interrupted them right in the middle of their workday, but they very graciously agreed to talk to us about their students' experience. Sonya started first.
There were a lot of things they did not know, and there was a lot of myth that they had about investing and money and credit. So getting that sorted out was really good.
What were some of the myths that you encountered?
It's better not to get credit card because you can get in trouble if you used it. They didn't connect that having a healthy credit score is the foundation for getting, that you can get to borrow money and borrow it for less and, those kinds of things.
So this is just like Abbey and Samir's families. Understanding how and why to build credit is really so important to create a financial foundation here in the U.S.
Completely. And I also asked Sonya and Hawi how their students felt about making the leap into investing, putting money into the Plaza as a means of generating income in the long run. The idea of being able to invest in a physical place in your community, it's something that seems really exciting to me. Was it really exciting to people in the class?
Actually, it really was. I feel like a lot of the people, they really wanted to own something. They want their own property. They want their own, like, that's something I own, but they couldn't do that with their own, like, financial situations or anything. So having, like, something that's like, oh, $10 a month, I can commit to this, and now I can invest in a place, and that's partial ownership. So it was amazing to see that.
It is. They were surprised how little money it takes to do a collective ownership. So that was a good eye opener for them. So I wish more areas are involved in that, more buildings.
Thank you. Not every day you get a podcast crew barging into your office, so thank you.
Any coffee or anything?
No, I think we're going to keep walking, but thank you so much. As we left Jonas's office, I asked John how the CIT got off the ground, and he told me it started with conversations. He and his colleagues went into the neighborhood and asked how they felt about their community. And they asked if people invest. No was the answer. And then he threw a thought experiment their way.
And so I postulated a couple buildings. At the time, this wasn't one of them. I said, what if you could own this? They were like, how? But yeah, we're interested in real estate. And we wanted to just test out a theory that community ownership of a commercial property was something that could work.
They wanted to see if, by allowing folks to chip in low-dollar amounts, if they could encourage folks to invest. And not just make money, but become more invested in their neighborhood's growth. And so later that year, Mercy Corps bought the building at 122 Plaza.
We bought this out of foreclosure, so it needed some love, and we needed to get it tenanted up with the kind of tenants that the neighborhood told us they wanted.
They offered affordable rental spaces to a variety of tenants, nonprofit and commercial alike. And then, over the course of 3 years, John and Mercy Corps figured out how to open up the building to community investment, with the goal of making the community members the building's full owners.
Now, anybody in the neighborhood can invest. The fireman across the street, the teacher, pastor, elected officials, but the majority, again, are first-time renters, women, people that have never invested before.
And then to protect their investors, they did something unique, something that hadn't been done before.
With our attorneys, some great attorneys have been working pro bono with us. They found this security law exemption that allows you to offer a corporate offering to unaccredited or lower income people if you do one of two things: get a government guarantee or get a direct pay letter of credit from a bank. And nobody had used this, but we found a good bank that did the primary mortgage and offered to do the direct pay letter of credit.
That's the thing that prevents people from losing money when they leave?
Yeah, we don't use it. Our intention is not to use it, but it stands there as protection for the investors. That was the magic. People can get their money out anytime they want with guaranteed no loss.
So in other words, community investors can pull out their investment at any time and get their cash back. But so far, few have done so because the property and the investor returns are doing well.
This building right now is owned by 250 families, and they're very consistent. They reinvest every year, but they're getting dividends annually, 9% dividends of average. Their share price has gone up in 4 years from $10 to $17.10. But one of the big reflections and I think most heartening things that we found is they're coming over. It activates the space. It activates their citizenry. So 68% of the investors, when we query them at the end of every year, 68% are reporting that they're more active in the neighborhood, even during COVID, than they were before. And we ask, why is that? They say, it's because I'm an owner. I have a bigger stake that's beyond my front door.
If a big developer came and knocked on your door and said, hey, we're going to offer to make a new building for you, what would you say? Would you say yes? Would you say yes, but? What would, or no?
I would say hell yes. Let's figure it out.
To John, the upside is clear. If a developer incorporates a CIT into a portion of their project, then they're essentially deciding that they're going to share in the success of the project. And in so doing, increase the likelihood that the project succeeds.
Right. This is great for everyone, right? As community members and others begin to patronize the building, as tenants line up to lease there, as other investors add to the resiliency of the grounds or maybe enhance the arts and culture spaces, this development will thrive for the long term. The developer will benefit from all that activation, and that will improve the chances of making a return on their investment.
Right. That's the idea anyway. But in the meantime, John is not waiting around. He is spreading the CIT model by working with cities across the U.S.
It's been Colorado Springs, Atlanta, Kansas City, Omaha, Memphis, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Fresno, Albany, New York. And then we're working now with Baltimore and St. Louis and some more in the queue. So our goal is to work with 1 million people in 100 cities in the next 5 to 10 years. Our intention there is to reduce the racial wealth gap, urban and rural. And if it sounds like impossibility with too many moving parts, we've done the homework and done the headaches to make it work, to make it simpler for other cities to replicate.
So in a few years' time, we could see CIT projects in cities all over the U.S. It is pretty exciting.
It is, right? I can imagine Jonas's and Sonya's and Hawi's all across the country spreading this model and teaching other community members how to become investors and even owners in their own neighborhoods.
And that would give even more folks the ability to generate wealth, right? If enough people and places catch on to this idea, that could help us start to chip away at the wealth gap that is in this country.
And what I also love about the CIT model, really about Esusu too, is that they create real win-win scenarios for people on both sides of the equation, right? Tenants and developers. And it's only by aligning those incentives that we can really start to break down some of the systemic inequities that are baked into our housing and development plans today.
Exactly. And in fact, there are some community wealth generating models that take us even beyond ownership entirely. Models that can expand across entire neighborhoods and districts. In fact, we don't have to go very far to find one.
Where are we going?
Well, you'll find out in part 2.
Thank you for listening to City of the Future, a podcast from Sidewalk Labs. Your hosts are Vanessa Quirk and me, Eric Jaffe. A big thanks to all the guests who made this episode possible: Marc Norman, John Haines, Yonas Kassie, Sonya Damtew, and Hawi Muleta.
Oh, and before we go, we have to thank the many lovely people who helped make this episode possible. So thank you to Allison Novak, Jesse Shapins, and Crystal Dean from Sidewalk's development team. Thanks to our producer, Guglielmo Mattioli, our advisor, Benjamin Walker, and our mixer, Andrew Calloway.
Story editing by Rough Cut Collective. Our music is by Adam James Levinarity of Lost Amsterdam. Our social media and transcripts are by Jamie Lee Hoglin. And our art is by the great Tim Cow. We'll see you in the future.
See ya.